Kazakhstan, 30 years of independence. We were once part of a single country, and we were once close neighbours, the 15 republics of the Soviet Union. Much has changed since 1991, but one thing has remained unchanged. We are still close neighbours today. What is the history behind these relationships? What is the current situation, and what are our plans for the future? How do people in our countries live and interact with one another? Kazakhstan and its neighbours in a special Qazaq TV project, Close Neighbours. This story could very well have started like this. Somewhere high in the mountains, there lived a proud eagle. Or from colourful markets with an abundance of exotic produce. On the surface, Georgia seems to be all about chochela, kinkali, festivals and wine. But Georgia has rich cultural layers. Or about fashionable tourist routes that have long become the hallmark of the country. If you stopped 100 people, 95 of them would probably tell you they've holidayed in Georgia. The story could no doubt have started with wine, as you'll find it wherever you turn, the cradle of winemaking. Just imagine, the technology here is 8,000 years old. Georgia is the birthplace of wine. All of these classic anecdotes turn out to be true and will always be there. That is for certain. But it's not easy to continue the story without starting from its essence. And the essence of Georgia is its people. The most appealing aspect of Georgia is its people. The social attitudes and how Georgians greet their guests. The disposition of Georgians towards guests. We always say, and this is the greatest tradition of Georgia, we say that when a guest arrives, that guest is sent from God. Now, can you see me? This way? Or that way? This is how I'd like it to be. Not like that. Yes, to the waist. First of all, thanks for your interest. In the 1940s, my great-grandfather came to Karaganda, Kazakhstan, and we are now in our 5th generation, in Astana, in Nur-Sultan.
Слава Богу, у нас всегда были хорошие отношения, а тем более после распада.
Thank God, we have always had good relations, and even more so after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when these relations moved to a completely different level. And I'm very grateful that Kazakhstan has always supported Georgia when times were really tough. Here, the first president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, played a very important role, always responding to the problems of Georgia and supporting us. Our political and economic relations have developed very positively, and I hope that they will continue to grow deeper in this way.
В принципе, развивались очень позитивно, и я надеюсь, что еще интенсивнее будут в положительном направлении развиваться.
This is not the end of the movie, it's just the beginning. The beginning of warm, good neighborly relations that have been built up over generations. By the way, I think that the Kazakh-Georgian friendship has also developed because of the Batumi seaport. Georgia is a state located in the western part of the Caucasus on the eastern coast of the Black Sea. It borders with Russia, Armenia, Turkey and Azerbaijan. Its territory covers 69,700 kilometers squared, placing it 119th in the world. The population, as of 1st of January 2021, is just over 3.7 million people. The capital, Tbilisi. The monetary unit, the Georgian lari. Diplomatic relations between Georgia and the Republic of Kazakhstan were established on July 23, 1992. Georgia is diverse. It is located in the Caucasus, but has European foundations and Eastern hospitality. Its territory is no larger than any of the regions of Kazakhstan. In a single day, you can find yourself high in the mountains, visiting temples and churches, strolling through the narrow streets of the capital Tbilisi, plunging into the healing waters of the Barjami resort, or meeting the sunset on the Black Sea coast with a glass of Georgian wine. Wine and winemaking in general, I believe, is a high art, culturally classic, and we can say that it's in our blood. One of the main exports, the country's calling card and lifestyle. Even Christianity here is inextricably linked with grapes. Saint Nino of Cappadocia baptized Georgia with a cross woven from a grapevine. I think that Georgian wines are different from all the wines in the world, because here, besides their history, there is real substance, because there are 43 types of soil, 13 microclimates, and more than 500 different varieties. Archaeologists say Georgia was the cradle of wine drinking. Even the intangible legacy of UNESCO backs this up. Wine with Georgian character. These large earthen vessels are called kvevri. They are placed into the ground so that they maintain a constant temperature, which guarantees the optimal fermentation process. Clay is fired at a special temperature, more than 1,000 degrees, and what's unusual is that it's put into the earth, and the temperature in the earth is always lower than above ground. During fermentation, it's very important to keep the temperature low, and this is how our ancestors came up with this unique approach. And in this way, very original wines are obtained. Nothing has stopped the winemaking process. Not war, not cataclysms, not even the current pandemic. However, after the collapse of the USSR, the market weakened significantly, and only recently has it reached export levels close to those times. The 5 leading importers are Russia, Ukraine, China, Kazakhstan, and Poland.
Мы много времени уделяем казахстанскому рынку и
We devote a lot of time to the Kazakhstani market and want to support and help as much as possible because we see a growing opportunity. What's also interesting is that Kazakh cuisine combines perfectly with Georgian wine, or Georgian wine with Kazakh cuisine. Because you have a lot of barbecues, there are lots of grilled dishes, spicy foods, horse meat, it all goes well.
Всякие шашлыки, там острая еда, конина, это прекрасно сочетается.
The Kazakh dastarkhan and the Georgian supra. The difference is perhaps only etymological. In fact, in essence, it's the same. It's all recognizable. The hospitality, the noisy get-togethers, and all to the accompaniment of chatter and music. You know, we're very similar, very passionate, very hospitable. We value friendships very much. We value relationships greatly. We respect women. I think there are many similarities. Very unexpected similarities, even at the genetic level. The peak of the Trialeti mountain range, swords buried deep in the ground, and epic warriors cast in bronze, a place of strength, courage, and determination. A story worthy of a Hollywood blockbuster. The scene of the action is Didgori, 40 kilometers from the capital, Tbilisi, the 12th century. It was our Kipchaks, our Kazakh ancestors. They helped us, helped protect Georgia from invaders. A momentous time and a battle for the Georgian people. After centuries of occupation and oppression from the Arabs and Turks, the Georgian king David the Builder is fighting for the occupied lands.
Он решил все-таки взять наемных кипчаков, потому что кипчаки в то время были лучшими воинами. Он сначала женился на кипчакской княжне, царевне.
He decided to use Kipchak mercenaries because at that time they were considered to be the best warriors. He first married into Kipchak royalty a princess, the daughter of Khan Artik. Artik was the son of Shahrukh Khan, the ruler of our steppe. So first he took a wife and, having lived with her for a year, he asked her father, the Khan Artik, to protect him from the invasion. Since they were mercenaries, Artik Khan agreed and came here. and he brought 40,000 families with him.
Как сказать, это была их работа, можно сказать, да? Вот, и они согласились, и он 40 тысяч семей он взял, с собой привез.
Even so, the forces of David IV were significantly weaker than the Seljuks. The Georgian king did not win by force, but rather through intelligence and political ingenuity.
Какую он придумал интересную историю. Значит, он берет, подготавливает 200 самых смелых.
He came up with such an interesting ruse. What happened was he prepared 200 of the most courageous, most determined Kipchak warriors. They were generally considered light cavalry. So there he was with these horses, and he sent them to where the enemy were camped in a gorge. And imagine, they are leaping and shouting that they wanted to defect, that they wanted to switch sides. Accept us, we surrender to you. And yes, with a white flag. So, of course, when they saw this, the Seljuk Turks were taken aback. But in truth, this is how war was then. So they accepted the deserters and agreed. And then, while the Turks were pondering what to do next, the Kipchaks, of course, pulled out their weapons and turned on them, slashing at the enemy soldiers all around them. Thus, they caused total disarray in the camp of the enemy.
Всех вокруг. Вот, то есть, таким образом, они внесли смятение в стан врага.
The Seljuks suffered a crushing defeat. The Golden Age, as it is also known, had begun. Georgia became united and gained independence. As a token of appreciation, the Kipchaks were given some of the best pastures, livestock, and became part of the community.
И даже здесь встречаются.
Even here, there are people who have eyes similar to ours, to Kazakh ones. Sometimes I meet someone who seems to be Georgian, and yet they aren't. You look at them and they speak Georgian very well, and yet they aren't ethnically Georgian. You get a sense of something familiar, that they're one of your own. Georgia is cosmopolitan today. In the center of Tbilisi, we find an example of tolerance and openness. Here is the only mosque where Sunnis and Shiites pray together, next to a synagogue, an Orthodox cathedral, and not far from an Armenian temple and Catholic churches. And here, another church, but this one is in the suburbs and has a different story, one connected to the people of Kazakhstan. Along these cozy European-style streets, there are houses with half-timbered German beams and carved Georgian balconies, paved roads, and a striking cemetery. Today, few Germans remain, but photographs have survived. Kirch is like a mini-museum, a window into history. In the first half of the 19th century, there were many reasons for relocation. The Caucasian Germans were mainly engaged in growing grapes and animal husbandry. According to some reports, it was the Germans who brought potatoes to Georgia. They approached everyday life seriously and methodically. The territory was covered in gardens and vineyards. The village quickly became prosperous. Workshops, a working winery, and a church were built. In the 1940s, Soviet Germans were declared enemies of the people and deported to Siberia and the Kazakh steppe. If you're from central Kazakhstan, then you almost certainly had a neighbor or class teacher with a name like Emma Friedrichovna or Otto Yoganovich. They could well have been Caucasian Germans. In memory of the German victims of wars, exile and famine. And Georgians themselves suffered under the Stalinist repressions. Some were forcibly resettled during the Soviet era, and they found a home in Kazakhstan, but for some the move was quite deliberate. I came for 2 months. They invited me to dance in Karaganda. So I said to myself, I'll go there for 2 months to rest and come back, but as you can see, I've been living here for 16 years. Yes, I go back and forth to home, but I've lived here for 16 years. I created a family here. My daughter was born here. When I arrived, I already told you that the older generation told me that the air here is such that, boy, it's very difficult to leave. Well, it was just a joke, but still, it had something of an aura. Though I didn't believe it. Honestly, I thought, no, 2 months and I'll leave. The people of Kazakhstan are very hospitable, I can tell you. He's lived in 2 different cities here and runs the Georgian dance ensemble. The troupe is multinational and drawn from different age groups. Rehearsals are almost daily. There is a friendly, jovial atmosphere, but as soon as the music begins, an iron discipline kicks in. Guys, we're done. We'll be standing this way. Be serious. Girls, do the same. For the ending, we'll do some twirls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Dance is not just made up by someone, somewhere. Dances are not invented. They're all taken from traditions, from history. In Georgia, each of our provinces has its own regional costume. Gori, for example, has different clothes for both girls and guys, yes. There, they dance in a different way. There are rigid movements. They have completely different customs, sometimes even with sabers. This is Svaneti, a mountainous place. Ajara, this is where the fishermen are based, and everything there is done at a slower pace, in a different way. There are still other examples. Nur-Sultan is twinned with the capital of Georgia. Tbilisi never sleeps. Life is in full swing. The aromas merge into one: the national cuisine, the wine, the song, and of course, the dancing. And they are unique. Founded in the 5th century as a fortress, Tbilisi today is the capital and largest city in the country. It stands at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. Nevertheless, the geography offered to tourists is diverse. Tskhaltubo and Barjami are examples of bathing resorts. This one is Sarme. Most tourists from Kazakhstan come to these resorts for rehabilitation, for preventative medicine. Georgia's mineral springs are another calling card. They are famous all over the world for their medicinal properties. Most of the hotels, sanatoriums and treatment centers were built during the Soviet period. A health resort for the whole Union. Tickets to come here were highly prized.
Исторически это место так и называлось, потом значит.
Historically, this place has always had this name, and so the city of Barjami was founded, though I would say it's more of a town than a city. A very interesting, very beautiful town. So this means it's reasonable to say that the city itself is a resort. On the other hand, it's most famous for the water that is extracted and bottled there. So that has made it a calling card for the whole world.
С одной стороны, визитная карточка и вода, которая добывается там и разливается, она другая, уже визитная карточка для всего мира.
Barjami is still an active tourist destination today. Drinking the water is said to be like a shower for your insides. It is used in the treatment and prevention of gastrointestinal diseases. The water is very hard, with natural bicarbonate of soda.
Самая популярность Баржоми проявила себя уже в годы Советского Союза.
The popular Barjami drink had already proven itself during the Soviet period. As you know, at that time, there were sales throughout the Union and Eastern Europe. Following independence, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Barjami got a second wind, and its market has already expanded.
Баржоми появилось второе дыхание, и, значит, этот Рин, эта география уже расширилась.
The collapse of the Union was by no means easy. Shelves were empty, there was a lack of money, and an unstable political situation in the country.
В эти тяжелые 90-е было очень важно друг другу.
In the difficult 90s, it was very important to support each other, even if only morally, because those years were really challenging. And here, of course, support, any friendly support, was very, very important, and we always knew we had this support. That being said, I believe that history will probably be even kinder. I think that Kazakhstan has been very lucky to have its first president because, you know, thank God, you have not experienced a civil war. You do not know what it means to lose territory. You do not know much about the things that Georgia has been through. And God forbid you ever find out and experience it for yourself.
Пережила, вы просто не знаете, и не дай Бог вам это узнать и почувствовать на себя.
The economy froze. GDP collapsed 3 times. More than 1 million people left the country. There were over 250 banks. Today, there are only 15. Economic exploitation flourished. There was a transitional currency, a coupon system. In 1994, we introduced the lari, and slowly but surely, with support from the central bank and from various international companies and organizations, the direction and development of both the economy and the banking system improved. And, accordingly, everything else began to do so gradually. However, it would take another 11 years to get things right. Active economic reforms began in 2006. At that time, Kazakhstan was ranked at the top of the list of countries investing in Georgia. A branch of a Kazakh bank was opened, and the first business meetings took place. Perhaps the biggest investment has been into the Batumi Oil Terminal, or BOT for short. The oil terminal is engaged in the shipment of oil and oil products of various types along numerous trade routes. One such route is for the transit of oil products from Kazakhstan to Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan, and there is another for the import of oil products into Georgia. The favorable strategic and geopolitical location of the BOT is a key factor in the decision-making process. Today, it is an important transport corridor. It provides Kazakhstan with access to world trade and economic markets. From here, through the Black Sea, hydrocarbons are transported to Europe and on to other regions. It's one of the largest enterprises, if not the largest, in the Adjara region.
Батумский порт – это элитарное место.
The port of Batumi is an elite place. The port is the heart and soul of the city. It's considered an honor to work in the port. In general, you can't have Batumi without the port as such, you know. The city has its origins in the port, and that says everything.
От Батумского порта начал развиваться город. Этим можно все сказать.
And the locals are proud that even the ancient Greek scientist Aristotle wrote about Batumi.
Данный порт является
This port is a natural bay, a bay created by nature, and the name Bata itself is an ancient Greek word that when translated means a deep water bay. Accordingly, this port in which we are today has welcomed ships for several centuries.
Уже несколько сот лет принимала суда.
A city where the past and the future meet. Today, the capital of Adjara, although chaotic and rapidly developing, retains its histories and traditions. Designed according to the standards of coastal cities, an embankment stretching along the sea with expensive hotels and souvenir shops, and further inland, authentic, narrow streets that you are happy to get lost in. Our friend went to Georgia and said, I didn't even feel that I was relaxing in Batumi on the sea. It felt like I was in Kazakhstan. Kazakhs in general have a great deal of affection for Georgia and all of its regions. This is Tbilisi, Kakheti, Borjomi, well, and Batumi. Let's say the Black Sea coast. Now, recently, Svaneti has appeared, and there is even someone who went to Tusheti, Racha, and Kutaisi. Here is an interesting statistic. Until recently, Kazakhstani tourists used to take 3 days of holidays. These days, they want to stay for 10. We say you have oil, and Georgia's oil is tourism. Visa-free entry, the launch of regular flights, a large-scale PR campaign about the country. The tourist potential is surprising, and it opens up new opportunities as a destination. This year, the third round of Georgian-Kazakh cooperation began.
так как оба страны
Since both countries are very young democracies, business itself is also very new and, as it were, based on experience. Business also needs to mature a little in order to follow the right path in this modern capitalist world. And I have become firmly convinced during this period that there has not been enough consistency in the Kazakh-Georgian relations, and in general for Kazakhs and Georgians, this aspect of reliability, organization, punctuality is very challenging. Business relations have been streamlined. A non-profit Kazakh-Georgian Economic Association was created. We all exchange information, and the society that has now been created, where we have founders of a company with Kazakh capital and Georgian capital, is still somehow economically interconnected. But this does not mean that it hasn't been done. It's just that we have now created a kind of platform where you can get various information. And if you have any questions, if you need help, then we will always share not only knowledge but also contacts. This also speeds up some of the processes. Basically, Kazakhstani business needs more experience of doing business in Georgia, and this experience is already being gained. In terms of investment into the Georgian economy, Kazakhstan accounts for one of the largest shares. From Central Asia, Kazakhstan is the #1 investor in Georgia, and in percentage terms, about 96% of investments from Central Asia come from Kazakhstan. This is a rather large figure for Georgia too, and it is clear that this is not just a figure. A lot of people are connected with this, many families who have already moved to Georgia. Wine, tea, mineral water, freight railroad cars, ferroalloys and vaccines are exported from Georgia to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan exports to Georgia include oil and oil products, wheat and pasta, steel, nitrogen, fertilizers, tobacco products, and much more. The people of Kazakhstan know more about Georgia than Georgians know about the people of Kazakhstan. I think that's because they have traveled to Georgia more than the other way around. And this issue is being addressed systematically. Nur-Sultan, November 2021. More than 30 Georgian tourist operators and entrepreneurs arrive in Kazakhstan. There are local companies here as well. There are brainstorming sessions, presentations, and an exchange of knowledge and ideas. And here is another sharing of experience. Football in Tbilisi. A friendly match between journalists. Such tournaments are held with no holds barred. Journalists are friends, but on the pitch, we turn into rivals as well. We also play like professionals. It's very engaging and it's fiercely competitive and always difficult to find a winner. This is the only kind of conflict we will find here. Or those that are a different art form altogether. After all, dance has always been the personification of Georgian freedom. And on to a toast. Even if this is an interview and not a traditional supra, how can one do without this beautiful Georgian tradition?
Я от всей души хочу всех казахстанцев, всем казахстанцам пожелать.
I would like to wish all the people of Kazakhstan the best of health in the face of this pandemic. First and foremost, health and prosperity to the country. The success that Kazakhstan has today is mainly down to the work of your former president. We understand this and we follow all the news from your country. We like to keep up with it. May God grant you peace and prosperity, and may all your ambitions come true, that your dreams are realized, and that all the plans that you make are successful and reach their full potential.
И процветание, которое они, то назначенное, и те планы, которые они имеют, чтобы все исполнились и все выполнились на пятерку.
Kazakhstan, 30 years of independence. A new look at a long-standing relationship. Incredible stories that are so similar. The Valley of Swords and a friendly rivalry. The Kazakh Dastarkhan and the Georgian Supra. A sea of friendship and support. Georgia and Kazakhstan in a special Qazaq TV project. Close Neighbours.